Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions, your media questions, 7 days a week. Let's go ahead and jump into those questions. Bill, what do we got?
Harold Williams starts us out this morning from Portsmouth. I've connected Apple TV through a switch in another room to a TV used as a second screen for Zoom. Does it need to be paired with the computer via Bluetooth? Are there any workarounds if Bluetooth is too weak?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm assuming what you're trying to do is to AirPlay to the Apple TV. If that's the case, there's no need for Bluetooth. Bluetooth is not part of AirPlay at all. If both the computer and the Apple TV are on the same network, they're on the same subnet, the same VLAN, and they can freely talk to each other. There are no firewall rules that are blocking traffic. Then you should be able to talk to it. Of course, again, but going back to firewall rules, MDNS should be able to pass through, so that the Apple TV can advertise its services to the computer. But if it's just on a standard network on the same VLAN, same subnet, it should just work.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, the stream goes over Wi-Fi, but you might need Bluetooth for the remote. I'm not sure if the Apple remote for the Apple TV goes over Bluetooth or not.
I think the remote's a Bluetooth, but
so you might, if you want to control it from the other room.
Of course, you're going to control it with your phone or your watch. If you have an Apple, that goes back to the network, of course. Mm-hmm. Okay, go ahead, Jason.
So if the Apple TV is plugged into or connected to your iCloud, there's a setting that says, who can connect, I think in system, that is, anyone at all, only people logged in with this Apple ID, and some other setting. But that's the only thing I could think of that could be getting in your way if you have the most recent Apple TV.
Next question.
Oliver Breidenbach, coming to us from Mimo Live headquarters, says Elgato's Wave Link, Steinberg's MixKey, both from Germany, and Apple voice isolation audio units opened the land grab for audio AI processing for creative. Perfect voice, no audio engineered required. Thoughts?
Go, Jeff.
Yeah, and there's a lot more depending on whether or not you're talking about live or post-production. Some of these tools work well in post, not obviously it's tougher to do it real time, but there's tools like Descript and Riverside and Adobe Podcast all have these quote-unquote AI tools that now, it's not perfect, it's not the best, but it's pretty darn good, and it comes down to a decision of quality over time spent and what the result will be. But they can take remarkably bad audio and get okay audio.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, my big problem, and I think a lot of people who have a lot of experience would say, is the word perfect. Perfect audio for video is not a simple task. Better is a simpler task these days because the algorithms for noise reduction and sampling the background and removing it algorithmically from the signal that you want to leave open is something that for the last 4 or 5 years has been just rolling out across a lot of software projects, making things easier for people to hear and easier for producers to produce. But it's that word perfect because it seems to me that even the best algorithms, it used to be I could get the 50% okay sound without much effort, then it got really harder. I think we're probably up to 70 or 80% really good sound. But moving from that to real exceptional quality, I think, is as hard as it's ever been and requires somebody with still a tremendous amount of knowledge, training, and good ears to achieve.
I got Mickey.
Yeah, I think tools like this, that are built for consumers, have a place. They have broadcasts that they're the perfect, they're the good solution within that situation. Those situations wherein perhaps, it's a single person just streaming from home, maybe video game streamers. I think a lot of these tools are built for that market. But I think saying perfect voice is quite a stretch for that because there's no one single tool that will that has just a single parameter like the Apple what do they call it? Voice isolation plugin just has a single parameter, and it's just to mix between wet and dry. You don't have any controls there. If this would allow you to get quote unquote perfect voice, then everyone would be using it, including the largest broadcast in the world. If it is like that easy to get perfect speech, So I would push against that, calling it perfect. But there is a market for this type of solution.
Good, Courtney.
I think they've come a long way in the last couple of years. I mean, it used to be Cedar and all the noise removal tools that used to be out there that were, selective attenuation of specific, it would monitor the background sounds and do selective EQ on specific frequencies without affecting the frequencies supposedly used in the voice, but there's no way to avoid that overlap. So there would be some holes in the frequency response of the wanted sound that you had because you were removing the unwanted sound. But these days, I think what AI is doing, and I'm using it, I'm soaking in it right now. The personalized audio is turned on right now on my on Zoom, which and their personalized audio is a pretty good, amazing. Apparently, people tell me, when my phone rings, I'm sorry for that phone ringing. They go, we didn't hear a phone ring. So it's like 3 feet from the microphone right here. No, we didn't hear it. I'm amazed by how good it is because I think using AI, they model your voice from the samples, and then they do the, parametric removal of certain frequencies of anything that isn't your voice. And then they recalculate and fill back in those holes with what would sound like your voice to complete those chunks that are removed in the frequency response. I think that's how they're doing it. And it can sound still pretty cool without too many artifacts that you used to hear in some of those noise removal tools. So I think it's getting better.
Yeah, I think that if you're doing a podcast, you can't get somebody to use a mic and they're in a bad room and everything else. This is a place where these kind of tools work fairly well to make that happen. If you have, but you shouldn't think that you don't need to have really good mics and setups and everything else to make it work. It'll work a lot better if you start with a good source. I think this was a kind of a missed opportunity for sound devices in the sense that they came out with noise assist and it was great. And a lot of us told them that you really should license that, but they really wanted to keep it on their own hardware and their own process. And I just felt like, eventually everyone's going to catch up. This is the problem with trying to hold on to technology is that if everyone else is having trouble with it, they're going to fix it, and now you have big companies that are fixing it like Apple and Zoom and everybody else. And so I think that but it's still, I still think, in my opinion, I still like noise assist better than anything else that I've used. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. And Zach wonders, has anyone else having trouble with Mac OS Tahoe randomly closing Splashtop Streamer?
I have not had this problem, but I haven't used Splashtop on Tahoe because I don't really use Tahoe that much. I use Tahoe on one machine that's using Resolve because I need some of the stuff that's there, and it's like my Tahoe machine. It's like an M3 Ultra that just is working on those things. So so I don't know. I don't know if it works, but I will say that if you're jumping on Tahoe now, you should expect to have, a bumpy ride. It's going to, I would wait. I wouldn't recommend ever going to a new operating system on a production computer until March on a Mac OS. And this has to do with folks supporting it. I know that Chris is going to tell you he jumps on it immediately, and it just is what it is. But it depends on what apps you're using. But if you're using anything outside of the really big apps, especially Apple apps like Final Cut or other things like that, if you're using a lot of apps, and especially if they're a little bit fringe made by smaller companies, it's not Apple that's the problem. It's that there's a bunch of little companies with 3 programmers that are trying to update everything, and they're just not done yet. Like it just takes them a certain amount of time, and so you just have to kind of keep that in mind as you go down that path. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I've had my main Zoom machine, the one that I'm on right now, is Tahoe, and I've definitely had some issues, but I'm not certain that they're Tahoe issues. Mickey thinks that they are. We've had some issues. I think that some of my issues were with the other, again, like Alex just said, smaller companies that are just struggling to keep up. But so far, given the things I've changed, and mostly it's stuff with like the Sound Desk audio mixer and Unity. We think Unity's been having some weird issues with Tahoe, but my pain threshold is much higher than Alex's. Alex is much more, fault tolerant. It's got to be perfect. And, it's like, oh, look, it's not working today. I'm going to think I'll take the day off. And that's kind of my attitude.
I mean, I think at the pace that Unity changes, I think it's probably one programmer. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, if this is a regular thing and you happen to notice that it happens, this is kind of a good case for popping up Activity Monitor and taking a look at what your machine is doing and seeing if there's any set of circumstances that are present, anything else going on at the same time that this is crashing out. I don't think a lot of users, and you may use Activity Monitor and know all about this stuff, but I very seldom do because my machine's pretty stable. But boy, when I've done that, it's been an interesting way to get an idea of what's happening internally in your computer when crashes happen.
But anything that's capturing the something like Splashtop is on the outer edge of what an OS supports, and so it's going to be the most sensitive to this kind of thing. Next question.
Next one comes from David Brady in New York City. Thoughts on Sennheiser's Spectera bidirectional wireless system? Can this be useful for events beyond live music? And he's got a link to it.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, the Spectera system from Sennheiser, really exciting. I haven't had my hands on it yet, but aside from music productions, I could definitely see it being used for.
Can you explain it to our listeners?
So it's a new wideband system from Sennheiser. There are a lot of new feature sets in this new system, but the one that David is speaking about in this context is the ability. Their body pack transmitters also have receivers in them, so you can have monitoring come back to the belt pack. Yeah. So you can have, say, a lavalier microphone or a headset microphone as well as an IEM coming back. And I could see how that may be useful in a music situation, but say in a broadcast situation where someone has both a mic and also an IFB, you can send the IFB return through that same belt pack. So that could be very useful there. I could also see it being useful for, say, in a film production environment, boom ops with RF booms feeding the sound card with monitoring coming back through the same pack. That could be very useful as well, although Sennheiser isn't really big in the EFP, ENG world. Well, aside from the lower end, the EW DPs as well as the G4 systems, the EW world, they're more on the low end when it comes to the film and ENG side of things. But could be interesting, especially if they come out with a smaller, perhaps smaller form factor and also smaller channel count receiver. Their rack mount receiver currently is a 32 channel receiver / transceiver, because it also transmits at the same time. Another exciting thing for me is with the Spectera system, the antenna system is all IP based. So it's Ethernet into the antennas, PoE powered, which is amazing. No more like large bundles of coax to run your antennas or RF over fiber systems.
Keeping track of the 50 ohm coax.
Yeah, well, that's keep 75 ohm to the video world and the MADI world. But being IP based, that means you can throw antennas for a distributed antenna system very quickly and easily. So many nice features in this system, and I just expect. I've invested recently in several other brands of systems, moving away from Lectrosonics. I hope the other brands also do similar things. But it's exciting to see this development.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, there are a number of Shure, and a number of them moving to this wideband system. They're heinously expensive, though. This is the size of the body pack that we're talking about that has both receiver and transmitter in it. I guess it runs on lithium-ion batteries there, and you can see it has input for microphone and antenna and headphones right there, so that you don't have to have that separate belt pack. The old way was you'd have to have a Comtech or something, an additional belt pack to do the IEMs with, or comms to your boom person. But these days, something can fit into this compact, a transmitter /
How much does it cost?
That is the question I was going to ask Mickey, if he knows how much it costs for 32 in, 32 out. and a rack mount. And it's interesting that they send RF over Ethernet. How do they do that for the remote antennas? I don't know. Or do they digitize? Do they have receivers built into that remote PoE unit, and it actually is receiving that wideband and converting it into a digital stream that it sends back to the receiver bank? And
yeah.
I don't know how it works. I don't know how it works.
Go ahead, Mickey.
So yeah, the going to the price question. So just going over to Sweetwater, looks like the receiver is $10,000 for the 32 channels.
So that's 30,
when you
for
think
32
about it,
channels? 32 channels
32
for 10
channels for $10,000 on the receiver side.
That cost per channel is very low.
Yeah, that's very low per channel on the receiver side. And then
remember that's when you say it's a receiver, that's transceiver, right? So that's $10,000. That's $10,000 for 64 channels.
Essentially, so it's not a bad deal. Comparing it to sound devices, you're talking about $3,000 or $4,000 US per channel, depending on how you configure it. So all in all, with that much density in a 1U frame, amazing. So, and the body pack transceiver, $2,000 again, compared to similar systems, it's not too bad.
Because remember that's
all 64, to fill up their 32 channels, you'd be talking about, $40,000.
But being able to know that you could scale up, and I think that the interesting thing there is that remember that's $2,000 for both your in-ear monitor and your mic transmitter. Do we know what is there any diversity in it? Do you know, Mickey, if there's any diversity in that transmission?
I'm not entirely sure in terms of
I don't think
what diversity
because it uses a different technique because it captures the entire bandwidth and then picks out the stuff, so it kind of tracks that way, and that's why it's so much cheaper the receiver, because they just have one front end.
And everything now is because essentially every single antenna is the actual radio,
right?
And it just communicates with the actual rack mount unit over IP,
right?
And with everything now, all modern RF systems, higher end modern RF systems, are moving over to SDR, software defined radio. So all they have to do is capture the spectrum,
right,
and then decode that into the audio bit stream that's being transmitted from your transceiver in this case.
But I think what's interesting is the ability to let's say, get that transceiver and get 8 body packs, for $25,000, $26,000, something like that. But then, and that's still a reasonable good price. But knowing that you just keep adding body packs, I mean, you still have you'd have another 24 that you could add, and for a large, I can definitely see. I mean, I also think that this could be for not the high end stuff, but smaller stage event, plays and so on and so forth. You'd have something that you may be able to use for that. Anyway, interesting. I think it's great. Next question.
Jason L. in Orange County comes up next. Is Zoom breakout rooms with playback of multi-participant video still available to do testing with ZoomISO? Thanks.
Go ahead, Mickey.
The one that used to be run by office hours in a breakout room within extra hours it isn't around anymore. But our friends Oliver Breidenbach and also Guy Cochran run another similar testing room over at for Memo Live, and I'll post the link in the chat.
Next question.
Next one comes from Tim Holm, Reverend Tim in San Lorenzo, California. I have Sennheiser head-worn microphones with adapters that fit the Sennheiser body packs. Is it possible to adapt these to a Shure body pack?
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, there sure is a way to do it. I've never personally done it, but yeah, you need a 3.5 millimeter to TA4F, and I'm sure there are any number of different companies that make these.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm not entirely certain what I sort of said the word Shure. I'm not entirely sure what which Sennheiser wired microphone you have, because Sennheiser uses 2 different types of connectors. On the lower end, they have as Jason mentioned, 3.5 mil locking, 3.5 mil for the microphone input, and on the mid to high end they use LiMo connectors, three pin LiMo connectors. But pretty much any headset mic or lavalier mic can be re-terminated to be able to work with any RF system that you're using. Shure on the low to mid end uses TA4 connectors. While in the mid to high end they use LiMo as well, although it's a different pin configuration from the LiMo that Sennheiser uses. So, but you can go into the user manual of your RF system, and any decent RF system within their manuals would have the pin configuration. For sure, this is the pin configuration for TA4. And if you scroll down here, this is the pin configuration for LiMo. So you have to determine whichever specific mic you're using, determine whether it's using either 2-wire or 3-wire for its wiring within the mic for the microphone cable, and adapt that to your or terminate that to the connector that your wireless system uses, or what your belt pack uses. You may also want to consult the user manual for the microphone itself, because sometimes some RF system manufacturer may have different recommended pin wiring for the microphones, while the microphone manufacturer itself may say something different. So you may want to just cross-reference the two manufacturers, but you absolutely can re-terminate them.
Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida is back, this time with, how do you clean up a Zoom recording from a poor network? The audio was clean, but the video had pauses and or repeated frames where there was transmission data loss. Thanks.
Go, Jeff.
I'm not sure I have a great recommendation for how to do that, because frankly, I've never seen that. Anytime I've seen a recording that has those inevitable glitches where someone's using Wi-Fi or for a variety of reasons, it is observed both in the video and audio. So one thing I'll just throw out there from a preemptive standpoint is to think about what your priority is. Is it live streaming? If so, that's what you have to deal with. If your priority is recording for post-production, like a podcast, an interview, whatever it is, I would argue Zoom is not the best platform for that, because you can't do double-ended recording. There are other platforms that prioritize the inverse. They prioritize the recording quality over the live streaming quality. So Riverside and Descript Rooms are two good examples of that. They have various tiers, but they kind of they hide all the complexity behind doing a double-ended recording for just an average guest that you may have on one of those shows, where they can just open up a browser. Hopefully they have some microphones and all that good stuff, but it is doing double-ended recording, and you're going to get the best possible recording that way, I think.
Go, Nikki.
Yeah, I agree. Riverside is a good solution for this. When you have uncertainty with the connectivity of the person that's being recorded, Riverside will be recording locally on their machine and uploading in the background as the recording is happening. But in terms of fixing an already recorded interview or video, there isn't really a way to completely fix it, but there are ways to hide it. So with something like this, depending on how long the pause is or the repeated frames are, you may be able to take a couple seconds before, a couple seconds after, and perhaps slow down those two clips so that it fills in that gap. And don't slow it down that it's like very noticeable that it would bother your viewers, but you can slow down those clips just a little bit to fill in that gap if the gap is short enough, and then perhaps do something like a morph cut in between, so that it's you're essentially just trying to hide that error in there. And there are a lot of ways to sort of work around it. If this is a piece that you're cutting B-roll on top of, then throw some B-roll on top of that glitch. So try to find means to hide it. There's no way to actually fix it, but you can find ways to hide it.
Go, Bill.
Yeah, Mickey stole mine. I just say this is the point of shooting B-roll, having something around. I mean, I always try to get a copy of the slideshow or something like that if it's a talking head, because you can always patch something like this super easy by just cutting away for an appropriate amount of time. Every time I've ever tried to take a single frame, and partially the success of this is going to be how long the glitch is. If the glitch is at all long, people will notice if you patch it with material from before, or they'll freeze momentarily, and it just isn't professional looking. Cutaway is always my first choice.
This is the biggest fix that you can use this for is collect all the times that this happens between a bunch of people, and then play it out to someone who says, I only need to use Wi-Fi. I do this all the time, and I don't need an Ethernet connection. All these glitches are coming from Wi-Fi, and people will say, well, I've got a 1 gig connection. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Wi-Fi is not built for a symmetrical connection. It is not built for real time. It was built for something completely different. We're using it for this, and those dropouts are not. You can't have. The only time Wi-Fi works is when you're in the middle of nowhere, and there is no Wi-Fi device moving in and out of the AP field. If any Wi-Fi device, every time a Wi-Fi device moves in and out of an AP field, you lose frames. So if you're in an office building or your apartment building or wherever it is, assume that within 200 feet, go look up, look down, look to the sides. If within 200 feet, somebody is moving, a car, somebody walking around their house, anytime they go in and out of that field, you're going to drop frames. That's the reality of how this works. Next question.
Next one comes from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I have a round table discussion, literally a round table, that I need to capture audio for, and it's about 4 to 5 participants. I'd like to use just one mic to do this. What are some good options to achieve solid and equal quality for all the presenters?
Go ahead, Jeff.
I love when I read questions like, I would like to do this. I mean, I would like to date a supermodel.
I would like to have a pony,
Both of these things are not realistic. I mean, sure, of course you can do it. It's not going to have great results. And from an editor standpoint, I will always reiterate, if this will be edited at all for any post-production use, I mean, you make it virtually impossible, because the opposite of that is having one audio track per participant, so we can edit the audio of each one individually. When it's all jumbled together, we can't really do anything about that. When people are stepping on each other in terms of talking, and you're just not going to have great results, in my opinion.
Go, Courtney.
Yeah, I concur about the overlaps and being able to edit it at all. We've tried situations where you put an omnidirectional microphone in the middle of a table, but the fact is it has to be very isolated from the table, because now everybody is going to be setting their coffee cup down or shuffling their papers, and there are beam-forming microphones these days that are designed for conferencing where you sit them in the middle of a table. I don't think they're very high quality. It depends on also the acoustics of your room. If you have a very live room, it's going to get very muddy with multiple voices and a microphone in the middle of the room. So if you're in a completely sound dampened and acoustically flat, dead area, you can maybe get away with it. But being able to have everybody be the same volume and have not one person who has a louder voice overpower somebody who is a meeker, quieter person that may be speaking on the opposite side of the table at the same time or trying to interrupt them, you're going to run into trouble. This is why I always, to get good audio for everyone, separately either lav them or mic them separately with a stock mic, and then record them all on separate channels. That way, in post-production, you can figure out who should have the attention of the listener at any one time when more than one person is talking or somebody's interrupting. There's a good way to do it and a cheap way to do it, and the good way is usually the better way.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, exactly what the Jeff and Courtney mentioned. I don't know why you would like to use just one mic, because it's certainly, if the quality of hey, check 1, 2 is sufficient for you, then sure, having everyone off mic is I guess sufficient for what you're trying to do. I would definitely mic everyone up. That would be my standard go-to. Just put the lav on everyone, and
would you
as a
use
backup, perhaps.
And MixKey, would you use what type of mic would you use if you were going to have everybody around a table?
This isn't mentioned here if this is just for recording or if this is for live, and if there is a PA system with a live audience. But assuming this is like just being recorded and there's no live audience, there's no PA system. My standard go-to for the longest time has been Sanken Cos 11s. They sound great. They cut really well with the popular boom mics you would find on set. And also they're very durable. That's why they're my go-tos. They're also not they're not as expensive as DPAs. I would love to have like everything DPA, but the Cos 11s have been a good balance for me. So that's my go-to. Can afford DPAs.
And those are omnidirectional.
Fantastic. Yes, omnidirectional. The Sanken Cos 11Ds are omnidirectional.
Yeah.
But if ever like you really have to stick to one mic for some weird reason, I would look into the Colette series from Sheps. It's a modular series. You can choose different preamps and different capsules to pair with the preamps. I would look if you can get the mic real close. I would pick the MK2 capsule. This is an Omni capsule. If you can really get the mic super close to everyone. On the Sennheiser side of things, there's the MKH8020, which is a similar Omni microphone. But if you can't get the mic like really up close and you need to give it a little bit of distance, I would go with the MK21 capsule in the Shep side of things, or the Sennheiser 8040. These are wide cardioid microphones or capsules. Just gives you a bit more focused pickup while still being very wide. Again, it's not going to sound great. It's not going to sound good. But if you really have to work within those parameters for some reason, then that would be my go-to.
And I would say that almost any lav, and I'm not a big lav person, but almost any lav would sound better than one mic in the middle of the desk. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, it's interesting. This question has garnered a huge amount of chat in the chat room, and most of it is actually from Zach answering questions. It's not. There's no PA. He says it's a very, in capital VERY, very low stakes recording. Zach, please explain what you mean by that. It sounds like you just don't want to work too hard, but you want to be able to hear what everybody's saying. And if that's the case, just put a mic in the middle of the table. But all these comments are good. You're going to be much better off if you put more mics and closer to mouths. But a whole lot of chat. Explain what you mean by very low stakes, Zach. I'm totally curious.
Go ahead, Mickey. Last word.
Yeah, I'm curious as well. Like, okay, it's a very low stakes recording. This probably, if I had to work within those parameters, I would turn down the gig. I wouldn't want to put my name on it. If I don't want to put out product like that. I don't know what situation Zach is in, or if Zach has to do this project or this production. But for me personally, like I would rather pass on the production if I have to put my name on that type of quality.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from David Brady in New York City. Is the Voyage audio spatial mic USB at US $999 a good entry into second order ambisonics, or is the $3,000 Dante version the way to go?
Good, Mickey.
Yeah, for me, I would probably, if you're just starting out and really want to dive first in the second order world, I would probably lean more towards the Octamic from Core Sound. They have been around for a while. They are, sort of like the SM58 of second order ambisonic mics. Although the Voyage mic is certainly catching up to that, but because it has been around for so long, there's so much support for it. You're not stuck with using just, for example, the manufacturer provided processing tools or plugins. There are a lot of third-party plugins that are able to decode the Octamic compared to the Voyage mics, wherein you're just stuck with their software.
So I have the Octamic, and I have both Voyage mics. So this is the this is the way I carry. This is the way I carry the I have this little tripod it's in what you would carry normally, arrows, little quiver, and I throw that over my shoulder when I go on walks, and if I hear something that I want to record, I just pop this thing out and grab some spatial, and then this one I'm building a 3D model of right now, so I actually have this one with little dots on it right now, but this is the Dante version of it. There's nothing like them. I don't think that there's anything close. I think that the core mic is a lot noisier across the channels and a lot harder to use. So these ones, the big advantage is that when I'm capturing, I didn't capture the core mic. I had to think about when I wanted to take it out. Like, it's got a box and it's got a thing, and I've got this one with the USB. I plug my phone into it and I capture from the mic. So I would say if I was going to get one mic, one second order mic, I would absolutely get the Voyage USB mic, because I can wander around anywhere. I plug my phone in, boom, I'm recording, and I'm able to record all those tracks. Yes, you have to use their processing to do it because it's got a Phantom 9th mic. But the main thing is that it is so convenient, and it is very quiet and really, really easy to use. It's got little controls on it that make it really, a pleasure to use. And so I would start with, if I was getting into Spatial, the only mic I would get at second order, and there's a big difference between first order and second order. so it's, you definitely hear a lot more. I would absolutely get the USB one. Now, the advantage of the Dante version, and one of the reasons it's more expensive, is it's got a DSP processor inside of it. And what that means is that you can have it output over Dante different formats. So you can have it be just the raw mics, but you can even say I want a first order output, or I want 5.1, or I want 7.1, and it'll rebuild those in the mic as it outputs them out, which means that for live outputs or whatever, I could hook this up to my Scorpio and then have the Scorpio get it the way I would get a 5.1 mic system, like we used the 5100 before from DPA, which is by the way, but a lot bigger. These are ones that you can kind of throw in your backpack and you're off to the races. And so I think the mics have been transformational for me. And if you look at the behind the scenes of what Apple is recording, you'll notice that the Dante mic is what you see the most often. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I think Alex brought up a good point. Like, what is the use case for this? What are you trying to do with this, David? If you need to be recording in the field and have a very lightweight kit, then the USB version might certainly be the solution for you. I like the Octamic because it's analog. And analog is, in any audio system, you will always have an analog stage somewhere. So that would be, like, as someone just starting out, that would be my default go-to. But if all the systems you may be using this for have a Dante network, then I would go the Dante route. So think of your use case. And also, similar thing with the noise floor. Yes, the Octamic has a higher noise floor, but if you're trying to capture ambience, like in a concert, that does not matter. Your gain will be way too low to even notice that self noise of the microphone itself. But if you're trying to capture ambience of nature, where you need to, although these are electret condenser capsules, you may still need to bring your gain up to like 30, 40, 50 dB if you're trying to capture natural nature ambience. Then you may want to lean towards a quieter mic with lower self noise. But yeah, think through what you're trying to use this for before you make a decision.
And to be clear, with the Octo, I have the Ambio, I have the HX3 or whatever, the one from Zoom, I've taken all of them out. It's really noisy. What I will say is that the volume of how much I captured was exponentially higher once I got the USB version of the Voyage mic because it was suddenly I had a phone, I have got this little mic and a stand, and I can just go capture wherever I want. The Octamic was definitely a process. Like I have to think about what I'm going to do. So being able to have a mic that you throw in your backpack, and I just know David, so I know that this is going to be David's. I think it's going to be David's jam, which is you got a little light stand, I got this little fold up light stand, and I got a mic, I got a USB cable. I'm going to plug it into my phone and go capture environments. Super powerful, and it was really transformational. I've been recording ambisonic for a decade, and this is definitely, these two mics have been the best that I've used. Go ahead, Chris.
I'm going to ask the real question, Alex. When you're carrying your mic around in your arrow quiver, where do you store your arrows?
You can fit 2 or 3 arrows in there with the mic, but you have to put the tips on after you pull. You have to put the tips on after you pull them out. There's a little pocket in the lower area.
Good to know.
Next question.
Next one comes from Kent Kahushi in Madison, Ohio. I have a Canon G30 camcorder and a Sony AX43 Handycam. I know now that I should have bought SDI only with the LiveU with SDI. Is there any good cages for HDMI cables? And he's trying to keep the cables connected better.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, with these camcorders, I don't know if you need a cage. Not many people make cages for these older camcorders. Here's the G30 camcorder. What I would do, this has a mini HDMI out on it. So what I would do is get you one of these, let's see, here it is, mini HDMI to full-size HDMI, little jumper cable. It's just a pigtail with a mini on one end and the regular full-size HDMI. And I would run that from the mini HDMI on the back of the camcorder and get you a Velcro strap, a little Velcro tie, or you could use a tie wrap and permanently tie wrap the full-size pigtail to the hand grip. So there you've always got a full-size HDMI out. It's not fixed, and you're not going to be destroying that connector by plugging in and unplugging that mini HDMI connector all the time or putting any stress on it, because it will permanently, be strain relieved in its little loop of cable that goes over to the hand grip. And that way you can just hang that off of the hand grip and not be afraid of, if you destroy that one little pigtail, then you can easily replace it for about $8 and you don't have to send your camcorder in to be, have a $500 replacement for that motherboard.
Go, Bill.
Yeah, and if you're just trying to keep the cables connected, one solution that I've looked into, there's a company called Tether Tools that makes a whole bunch of individual little things to keep cables from pulling out of things. This happens to be their kind of tripod mounting place replacement, but it actually has a lever on it. You can lock your cable into place right at the camera base. They have other tools, all sorts of little connector things that you can snap onto other things. So if you're just trying to keep the connection solid, that's another way to look at it rather than going through all the rest of that rigmarole.
Go, Jason.
Yeah, plus one for Jerk Stopper that I think is the product line that is owned by Tether Tools that does exactly and only this.
Next question.
Next one comes from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. In post, what's your preferred method for cleaning up dialogue from a lav mic with heavy clothing rustle or a handheld dynamic mic that gets banged around? What specific plugins or techniques are most effective at salvaging otherwise unusable audio?
Go ahead, Jeff.
I found voice isolation in DaVinci Resolve Studio version pretty good at this. It really depends on the, specific problems it's trying to fix. And what's nice is you can actually kind of adjust this with automation, so that you're not necessarily applying such drastic correction to all of the audio, but just isolated points where you need it. Another couple things, I'm not a huge fan of promoting Waves, but Waves has their Clarity VX, their stock or non-pro, I guess, $50. It's like kind of Mickey talked about, like no controls. It's just one big giant knob, like more or less. And then they have the pro version, quote unquote, for $250 with more dials and sliders and stuff to really dial it in. It is, again, another one of those quote unquote AI that a little bit more intelligent. And like Courtney was talking about before, the difference is trying to isolate the voice, which is the opposite of what older noise reduction would do, and that's how they achieve that. And then again, these tools like Riverside and Descript both have these kind of very simple magic audio or studio sound, and they are just dials 0 to 100. And now, little quick tip: if you are going to be doing editing, their 0 to 100, which I thought was like a fancy algorithm, is literally they create a 100% corrected file, and when you do 0 to 100%, they're kind of adjusting a mix of wet, dry. So what you can do is download the 100% corrected file, and again, in your DAW, have that and the original, and use automation to kind of blend in the corrected version, mix out the problematic version.
Sorry, I got lost something in my... Oh, I got it.
Mickey's up next.
Mickey, sorry.
So yeah, well, the real solution for this is to record clean sound on location on set to begin with, so that you don't have to go through and spend thousands of dollars of your time fixing it. But if you do have something that you do have to fix, what I do is I open up the clips in Spatial View so that I can, going to what Jeff was mentioning earlier, I think Jeff was mentioning just selecting the problematic portion of the clip and processing that. I go deeper and opening it up in Spectral View so that not only am I selecting just the portion of the clip time in terms of time, but also the specific problematic frequency range, and only treat that area. In terms of clothing rustle, both Synaptic and Isotope have modules for, or plugins for, de-rustle. That would be, first step, depending on the type of rustling you're hearing, whether it's more on the high end, low end, broadband. So different modules do different things. So when I'm trying to do audio restoration or cleanup, I like to do a lot of very light passes instead of one heavy-handed one, and treat different portions of the problem differently. So I would go in and use de-rustle. Another one would be decrackle. Is also a good one for fixing the clothing rustle. Sometimes the click also helps, depending, again, like what type of noise you have. And sometimes even the declipper could also help with that, to rebuild the waveform so that you have a natural dynamics after fixing the issues. Another thing I like doing is using the built-in dialogue isolate module within Isotope's Spectral View. There, again, painting those portions out with a mouse, or if you're a tablet person, a Wacom person, you can also paint those sections out, or lasso them. If you want to use Photoshop terminology, lasso them and process them individually. In terms of mic handling noise, I guess what you mean by a microphone that gets banged around, handling noise, that's super easy to spot in your spectral view. So you can highlight that, lasso around that, and then use either spectral repair, or simply, because that's usually like in the low, mids to lows, you can just gain down all that handling noise, and people wouldn't notice the difference, because the speech register is much higher than a lot of the microphone handling noise frequencies. So you can just gain it down, or do a spectral repair so that you're rebuilding that noise floor in that section of the frequency range.
Go, Jason.
Wow, very little I can add to that. +1 on Isotope RX. For those who are unfamiliar with it, this is what the spectral view looks like. And I would posit that whoever it is that placed that mic and was listening and allowed that has to do those selections, every single selection, every single paint to do the repair. It'll never happen again.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, to bring back something that Alex brought up last week, and I got to tell you, Alex, I told you this earlier. I went down a huge deep dive on Jacob Collier when you mentioned him last week. There's a great recording of him doing a live performance of his song called Little Blue. And in that video, he's singing on a hidden microphone that's hidden in his beanie here that some very astute YouTube or internet nerd found. And it can be done hiding microphones well, but this is why we hire audio recordists, sound recordists. I think a lot of these troubles come from people that just say, oh, I have a microphone and I'm going to do it. And there's not a professional like listening and calling it out and knowing how to mount a microphone, hide a microphone properly. You can't just replace your sound recordist. You need somebody who knows what they're doing on your set.
Or do a lot of it and know that you're not going to get it all working. And a lot of times I have to admit that I work on a lot of things and sometimes I'm not very good at it, but I don't charge for it. And I do it so that I don't know what, like last night, I've decided that I want to get better at shooting with iPhones on the Blackmagic camera. So my daughter's band was playing at all these bands were playing. It's a high school thing. All these bands are playing and my son and I have 2 iPhone 17s with Blackmagic cameras and we're syncing them up and doing it. Am I charging them for that? Absolutely not. Am I going to give them whatever I got? Sure. Yeah. And whatever I get is going to be better than what they had. And so you go to places where whatever you're going to do is better than what was going to happen anyway. You don't charge for it and you figure it out. And a lot of times, and I'm not very past oriented. If I'm not charging for it and it didn't work out, I don't spend a lot of time on it. I just go, we'll move on. And the thing is that, you learn from that, but going out and shooting a lot of things will teach you that, you think like we can just fix it in post, and fixing it in post takes a long time, and there's so many things, it's so painful. Now, there are reasons to fix it in post. So when I've been on set, I've been the visual effects, soup or whatever to look at stuff, and you've got 100 people and moving something out of frame is going to cost, you do the math in your head really fast. If I move that out of the frame, it's costing per minute, $42 a minute or $80 a minute or $100 a minute or $1,000 a minute, that it costs to have paying all those people to wait for me to move that across, move that out of frame. I can fix that with a roto for $300, and so I'll make that decision as I can fix that. But most of the time, we shot, I did a movie a long time ago out of Japan, and, we had a very limited budget and we had to shoot 105 car shots with green screen and everything else, these interior car shots. And I was meticulous on set every time we did it. And we got great shots, and we did it really fast, all through motion of all things. And this is like 2008. And they all looked better than most of what you see on feature films because we were careful on set to do that, because I knew I didn't have time. I didn't have the time and budget to really fix it. And you can see a lot of interior car shots. Like I think Mike Seymour talks about the fact that he measures the level of the quality of the visual effects by the interior car shots. How do they look? And when you can see every little hair and everything else, people are paying attention to every little detail. Next question.
Craig Kadoki in Toronto, Canada is up next. What does it take to have a 5.1 stream in a web page? My TV provider's World Series feed was 5.1, but YouTube never is. Is this YouTube not trying or caring, even though their Apple TV app can do it?
So the question is whether they were, what you're talking about, it was a live stream to the to YouTube.com or to YouTube, the TV.YouTube, .com. So is it the TV app? Because the TV app definitely does 5.1. It's kind of funny if you actually watch football on or baseball, but mostly NFL, you'll notice that when you switch to the 4 pane, if you have a 5.1 system, when you switch to 4 up, it goes to stereo, and it's weird because you go to stereo and then you go into one of the games and it becomes immersive again. And so so they definitely can support 5.1 on TV. Now, if they were streaming, the question is was it YouTube that was streaming or was it the provider that was streaming? Because a lot of providers aren't going to know how to do a 5.1 stream to YouTube. So they have to, and so YouTube definitely supports it. But it could be that the provider, whoever's doing it, doesn't really know how to do that. I have learned, because I do almost all my work is 5.1. And so the vagaries of processing and transporting 5.1 in a stereo world, you do have to pay attention, like it's, for a live process. There's a lot of places where people just go, oh, we'll just go to stereo, because we just can't figure out how to make that work. So anyway, I think that the question is whether the provider was doing the stream or whether YouTube was doing the stream. But YouTube and YouTube TV are definitely capable of 5.1, and they definitely do sports in 5.1 when it's properly encoded. Next question.
Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach, Florida, here on the panel says, has anyone tested the new iPadOS local capture for double-ended recordings?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, it looks like maybe not. So just real quick, this is perhaps one of the solutions, that's now available on iOS in the form of iPadOS for that double-ended recording we were talking about, where, some of the tools like Riverside and Descript Rooms. And boy, it'd be great if Zoom maybe, figured one day on offering this. But
I will say, if Zoom ever gets around to it, if Zoom ever gets around to double-end recording, everybody's dead. Like I would, if I had stock in Riverside, I would sell it really quickly because Riverside is really quirky. Like it does the job really well, but it's really a funky thing to use. And web page based, whatever is kind of trash. So because Riverside doesn't have an app, they've kind of gone down the cheap and easy route there. They leave themselves open to if Zoom ever turned their direction, they would be toast so fast that they would be able to find themselves. And then that's their own fault because all they had to do was really build a great app to do that, and they had many years to do it. Anyway, go ahead.
And I will say, I mean, there's some overlap, but there's also a huge audience of non-technical podcasters, everything else, where these tools offer a complete okay solution in terms of, and now they're AI, cutting the video and creating a full edit and clips and everything. Again, they're not great, but for someone who doesn't have the time, skill, or budget, it is not just the recording. But so this is interesting, and maybe one day we schedule a test if no one has done it. But this is now, so what Apple has done is introduced the ability, kind of tool agnostic, but whatever video conferencing software you're using,
because it's working at the OS level.
Right, to do a double-ended recording at the OS level. And then, they also kind of muddy the waters a little bit with, then you can also turn on some of this audio filtering, and they talk about how you can, also, of course, we now have mic selection, which is awesome, so you could, even potentially be using AirPods with that. So this is interesting if anyone has tested, or maybe one day we do a test.
It's on my list of things to test in my copious free time. I think we're thinking about using it for, Michael Krasny's podcast as that comes back online. And the main thing is like, do we really want to send an iPad to people? Because the problem is, do people have an iPad that they can use for that? But I do think that if I was
back.
Sorry.
And get it back.
And get it back. Yeah, the drill there. So sending things out to people and getting them back is the thing, And so I'd love to get to a point where I had the budget on a podcast to be able to just send them what they need and then just say, you can keep it. Thank you for being on the show. So that's the dream. Next question.
Paul Wallace, Austin, Texas. What dynamic mics and battery-powered condenser mics work best with the Tascam DR-10X recorder for doing interviews and field recordings?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, your microphone choice really shouldn't be dictated by what recorder you're using. You pick the microphone that works best in the situation that you're in. If you, just because of the form factor of this recorder, I assume you're trying to do coverage or do interviews in a run and gun situation out in the field, possibly in a noisy environment, not an uncontrolled environment. In that situation, I would typically go for a Sennheiser MD46, which is the industry standard interview microphone for this type of situation. If you're in a more controlled environment, you may want to um, uh, think of or look at the Electro Voice RE50B, which is the modern equivalent, I believe, of the Electro Voice 637. Bill, they have that model, correct?
Yeah, the 637 was the stick
yeah.
it in your camera bag and it'll always work mic for decades.
Yeah, so the RE50B is the modern version of the 637. In terms of other types of microphones you may use in this situation, you may want to look at a Sanken COS 11D. It's a lavalier microphone. They do have a version that has a belt clip that can take AA batteries and power the microphone that way. So you don't need a device with phantom power in it because this Tascam recorder does not have phantom power. This may be an option for you if you want the lavalier. But if all else fails and you do want to use a full condenser microphone that requires 48 volts phantom power, you may want to take a look at something like the UMP from Ambient. It's a tiny little box with TA4 connectors on them. And can supply phantom power to a microphone. It just plugs in inline between the recorder and your full condenser microphone.
Go, Courtney.
Yeah, I was just looking at the recorder. They kind of missed the boat in that they don't do 32-bit recording. It's only 16 or 24-bit audio recording, and their input preamps for that input only has a switch for microphone gain, low, mid, and high. So if you're using a dynamic mic that doesn't have a very high output, you may have a little bit of noise to deal with, self-noise to deal with on that mic preamp. It depends. I was going to suggest the Audio-Technica and Electret condenser, but now that Mickey said it doesn't support phantom, I'm not sure if it supports bias voltage for an Electret condenser, and these Audio-Technica makes a pretty clean, inexpensive handheld mic that is an Electret condenser, but I don't know if it provides the plug-in power of 1.5 to 5 volts to power that Electret head.
Go, Jeff.
It's rare that I would question Mickey's opinion, especially when we're talking about does the location or the recorder dictate the mic. But everyone knows if you're out in the field with a field recorder, then obviously we know that you need to be using a tiny mic. So that's the one correction I would just offer.
Only if you look like Sydney Sweeney. You get over it.
The little mic thing. Oh my gosh, it's such a. Anyway, next question.
Thank God we're out of that. Norm Clare, Waterloo, Ontario says, why is the ATMOS workflow from DAW to speakers so convoluted? It's a dizzying array of connectivity problems between playback devices and decoders. Apple's HDMI is limited. Optical connections are limited. There seems to be no standard connection.
Good, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm curious why there is HDMI and optical connections involved if you're trying to monitor from a DAW. Most modern DAWs, especially the ones that are designed or are used a lot in the post-production world, have an ATMOS renderer built in. So you have to set up the renderer, send your tracks, your object tracks and your bed tracks to the renderer and assign the metadata between those two. So that the renderer knows which tracks are objects, which tracks are beds. Build that up, and then it just goes out through your standard monitoring path in your DAW, goes out to your audio interface. Your monitors plug into your audio interface, or if you have processors down the line in your B chain, it goes to just standard monitoring pipeline down the line. So there's certainly no need for any HDMI connections and all that. It's just your DAW spits it out to your audio interface. You can also, of course, use a standalone if you're doing more complex. If you have more complex deliverables, then you can use the standalone Dolby Atmos production suite with the Dolby Atmos renderer. But that still goes out just through your standard audio interface. No HDMI involved, no optical, consumer optical audio involved. It's just pointed to your audio interface.
Thanks so much for all the great questions. A lot of heavy audio questions for our audio day. So I really appreciate all the great questions from our producers around audio, as well as all the other technical questions that came in. And thanks to the incredible panel here that answered those audio questions, audio heavy panel as well. So thanks. We can't do this without you. And thanks to the incredible team on the back end that makes this possible. And we have different teams that work on the weekdays and the weekends and the evenings and the Sundays. And this is far beyond a basic Zoom connection. And we really appreciate everybody's contribution. Today, if we had done this in person, we would have traveled 43,000 miles. That's 67,000 kilometers, and that is 340 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours.
Voted sticker got on the banana.
There you go.
The banana voted? Wait a second. Fraud.
We've been talking about this. People voting that shouldn't be voting. There definitely shouldn't be.
There it is. Voter
voting.
fraud. I found it.
I don't know. The banana lobby is powerful.
Oh, man. Yeah,
the
exactly.
slippery slope, I tell you.
Yeah, next thing you know, we're gonna be buying a lot of plantains.
Say no to persimmons.
All right, see you guys.